sweater on.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
That's good.
I don't know. Summer's over.
You could handle it for an hour.
Yeah, and then it's if I
You always
take
peel it off.
I know, but then if I take it off, my shirt is bright.
Yeah.
So people that watch are gonna be like, "What happened?
What happened? Yeah.
Did a full changer?"
Yeah.
The summer's over now. We had our last week.
We did.
It's a weird sentence.
Yeah.
Last week.
Last week.
I
Yeah.
know. So it's over. As you stated when we talked about it earlier, time is both fast and slow.
Yep.
Because at the summer, it seems like it's going to be such a long grind of off season, and then next thing you know, we got guys flying out to their teams, kids leaving, AAA season starting up, etc.
Yeah.
What do you think of the summer, Coach Andy?
Oh, it was great. It was busy as hell.
Yeah, it was busy as hell.
But that's going with your time is fast and slow. It's you know, you go into the training season, right? You know, I can't believe like it goes fast, but you look at it when it's over, you go, oh my God, we got like 4 or 5 months here to train. Like I'm looking at a player's perspective, and next thing you know, you've only got a couple weeks left. So are you sitting there going, did I do everything I could? Because it's easy to take, like, it's interesting to watch different guys do different things, right?
Yep.
And what do you squeeze in? Like, it not necessarily shows how serious you are, but it shows how organized you are in a sense. So you'll see guys that do, you know, they don't plan out their weekends, they don't plan out their time off, because you start thinking, okay, like, because what happens is you get in the grind and you go 2-3 weeks pretty hard, let's say, where you're training and you're whatever, and you can think after 2 weeks of going hard that you need I need a break. And then it's okay, so there's one weekend that you blow. And then if you don't have it really planned out, you could not maximize your training at all, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I find is, like, if everyone's to look at their schedule and say, okay, did I do everything I could? Did I take advantage of it? Some, yeah, for sure. And some, you know what, I could have did a little bit more. It's even like the eating, right? It's like
I was
yeah.
gonna bring that up.
Yeah.
Because that's the easiest tell for me is body composition. That's why I love that we do that, because you can't hide, right? So I can see, it's like if you're floating around the same for 4 weeks, then I know that you're not, because it's not the training, right? You're getting the training. Like, it's like you talked about in a previous episode about how everybody does the baseline. Like, everyone shows up for their workout and their skate. And then, so you're here for 3-4 hours and then you're gone. And I don't know what you do for the rest of your day, but I can tell a little bit when you do your weigh-in and you do your body fat, right? And that's the hard part. That's where you can get caught up, because it's easy to not give a rip when the boys ask, hey, let's go eat somewhere, or let's have a few beers, or whatever it is. So that's where I can tell for sure. But
yeah. So that, yeah, you just look at the summer and you go, did you do everything you could? Did you do too much? Like all that kind of stuff, right? So anyways, it's a tough balance, because there's a lot of things that you have to take care of as a player. You got to train, you got to work out, you got to skate, got to do your yoga, whatever it is that you need to do to make your life better. So doing a little bit of extra is not going to hurt you. Got to make sure you do enough. And then from our perspective as trainers, wow, you look at that 7 weeks and you go, wow, this is like, you look at 7 weeks and the long days that you put in. Those first 2 weeks you're just like, oh, this is going to be a long haul again. And every summer, it's like, oh my God, we're not even halfway through, and you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, time just goes by really, really, really quick. The next thing you know, we'll be in games and everybody will be happy again playing hockey.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing about this summer that was different for me is all of our junior guys are getting older now. So we have so many guys that are just kind of scattered everywhere.
All over the globe.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to watching those kids.
Oh yeah.
And keeping track of, you know, where they're at and how they're doing, whether it's some NCAA guys or not even the OHL guys anymore, just like the guys that are going to BC or the Manitoba League or wherever they're going. It's like I'll be interested to watch how those guys pan out now that they're up. They're getting close to like their commitment years for scholarship and whatever. So that'll be cool. And then we made some connections with more school guys this summer, so it'll be nice to watch some of those guys as that starts to broaden out. And then some of our younger kids, like the out of town kids, like that would be cool to run into those guys or keep an eye on those guys or see them again whether it's some of those kids from Michigan that were coming around, or some of the kids up the 401 that are playing in the Alliance Loop, or in Toronto. So
Yeah. I'm going to be connecting with a lot of them on my road trips
yeah, that's awesome.
for
Yeah,
do some training up there. So
yeah. So that's kind of the new element we haven't had before. And it's funny you think, because for people that have been listening for a couple years, it's like that was never part of the commentary. But you can see how time goes on and like things develop. Now we have like some connections with people that are across Ontario, through Michigan. Not as many across North America, but enough to be worth mentioning. And then with our junior guys that are just scattered everywhere, they're all getting older now. So you're going to start to see some of you guys that listen will start to see some of their names pop up in other places now, because we always hit on like we talk about kids that are in the OHL that we train and stuff, because they're the easiest to talk about because people would know them maybe already. But some of these other guys, like Clarkie's a good example, that got drafted to Tampa Bay. Nobody knew him before, and now it's like he's going to St. Cloud to play Division One. So there's a name that'll pop up, or Jeff that's playing at RIT, or these kind of guys, right? So, um, so that was cool.
Hey guys, my name is David. For the last roughly year or so, I've been a member of the PowerTech podcast, and I've trusted Eric and Andy to help me as a hockey dad, raising my kids and trying to figure out the answers. I don't have all the answers, and it's a great source of information, and it's an area where I feel comfortable leaning on to help me make better decisions. With that said, one thing I do know about is supplements. I find it's hard to navigate the whole supplement world and make sure that you're using products that work, that are effective, and again, are science research based. Blue Star products, incredible brand. Their products are based on research, science, the products work, trademark patent ingredients, and you can find all of the research just by scanning QR codes that are right on the back of the product. Thank you to Eric and Andy for their podcast. I think it's amazing, and definitely give Blue Star products a try.
We're gonna do a Q&A episode today. So I took 10 questions of the questions we got, because there's too many questions, so I can't do all of them, but I'm doing as many as I can. So I always prioritize, first of all, questions that are on topic. So this was about like the coaching series, so I try to take questions that are mostly about the coach stuff, because people are always asking questions about like their personal situations, whatever. But I try to keep it so we have some different, because people ask a lot of the same questions. So these are mostly to do with the coaching series that we just finished. So these are from people that are members online. So I want to talk about the memberships again for a second, because we haven't done that for a while. If you are interested in doing that, or like joining us to be a member, this is one of the things you get is when we do Q&A stuff, we answer your questions on the podcast, which is cool. Then we have like discount stuff on our store if you like merch and stuff. And then we have the videos that are on the website, like skill training, stuff on ice, that videos that you did back in the day. Back in the day, you see, actually, one of the videos, one of the guys found a clip of it on YouTube with Charlie when he was just a little guy,
yeah,
because it was like 2016 or 2017.
yeah,
So Charlie's just a little dude still, which is funny.
yeah.
But anyways, beyond that, I think the most important thing for me, or the thing that I like best, is that people can actually talk to us. So we have consultation calls with members all the time. So people that are members, like, we have them. You don't obviously hear them or see them, but people will write in that are members, and we book those and talk about all kinds of stuff that are like personal to you. And because the hockey season's starting in the next few weeks, this is a good time to do. It's probably the best time to do it, because we'll be with you through the start of the season, or tryouts if that hasn't happened yet, dealing with your coach stuff right off the hop. And that's whether you're a coach or a parent, or for the kid, right? And kids don't know as much, but you even had one the other day,
Yeah.
or yesterday,
Yesterday, yeah.
with a young kid.
Yeah.
So it's good
Yeah.
to have the
15-year-old.
Yeah, it's good
From
to have
Nova Scotia.
Oh, Nova Scotia, cool.
Nova Scotia.
I didn't know that.
The goal of basically asking, you describe the type of player he is, and like the process of getting to the drafted to the JHL.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it was
So
good.
so my point being, this is probably the best time to do it if you're gonna do it, because then we could be with you the whole season. So you'll have a resource, which is nice, because it's always a few months in, and you probably remember from coaching where like everything's good for the first month or whatever, but then the conflict starts to creep in. So if you can be like a little bit prepared with some tools that we talk about, and then you can get it specific to your situation, which is what makes it best, because people email me questions, or they write in DMs or whatever, and it's like, it's hard to, I always say in my answers, whenever I give anyone a written response, it's like I always say, like, it's hard to give appropriate advice when I don't know you or don't know the situation. So all I can do is give you the general things that if you don't know, maybe you should know, but I'll give you general things that oftentimes people find really helpful, but it can be way more curated to you if we actually can have a conversation. So for me anyways, I just wanted to plug that quick because I think it's a good time to do it. Um, so you get like the cool little shit, but then it's like you can actually talk, and it can be if it's something that's more appropriate for you to talk about, you'll talk. If it's something more appropriate for me, then I'll talk with you or whatever. And then you can work through problems together, and you have a resource when you're not sure. So I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, or do you want me to just start the questions?
No, I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Cool. So some of the questions are kind of long, but I'm gonna read them because I think they're good. So, uh, first one. This was the first question we got when I sent it out several weeks ago. So, um, I'm gonna leave the names out. First off, I want to say that I'm obsessed with your podcast. Sweet. Thank you both, Andy and Eric, for doing what you guys do. Just to give a little background, I currently coach my son's U12 travel team over here in Michigan. I played at the junior level back in the early 2000s, so I have a pretty decent knowledge of the game. However, the game has changed a bit since I played. In the next couple of years, I don't want to be that coach Eric had as a kid where he politely bows out because the level of the game surpasses my knowledge, or should I say coaching ability. I was that dad that started coaching because he didn't think the coaching available at the time through our hockey association was very good. Today I find myself coaching because I absolutely love it and would do it even if my son never wanted to play another day of hockey again. With all that being said, here's my first question. What is the best way to continue my hockey education and grow as a coach so I'm confident in coaching older kids at higher levels and I can grow with the team I've coached since U8? So, boiling that down, um, I'm coaching young travel team. How can I continue to grow as a coach and develop to coach that same team as they get to higher levels, etc. So I'm assuming he has some kind of sounds like there's a hint of aspiration to coach higher levels, possibly. So you can take that one to start.
Yeah, that's it's a loaded question. um, I think obviously watching hockey gives you an idea, but the thing is that you don't have to complicate it too much. I like one of the questions says he doesn't want the game has changed, and I don't want the game to surpass me, is what he said. Yeah, basically, right? And I don't think it will, because the game has changed, but it's stayed the same as well. Like there's little things that have changed. Like if you look at the game, yeah, there's uh, just going back from when I played, there was a red line, so two line passes, and there was a different style of game. It was we would say it's a little bit quicker now. I would say that there's when you get to hitting and stuff, like the body contact is sometimes less, sometimes it's not. But I think the nuts and bolts of the game are pretty much the same. And then I wouldn't get too caught up in the change of the game too much because it's still very simple. I had a good conversation with my son just the other day. I was listening to Brad May on a podcast. I listen to a podcast every now and then, and Brad May was a pretty good, similar to my son, plays a pretty rough game, um, played pretty tough, like getting some scraps and all that kind of stuff. So when he was in the NHL, he went to his coach Ted Nolan. Ted Nolan, he said, he felt like Brad May thought he was in a little bit of a funk, and he just asked him how to fix it, and he said, "Stop thinking." Okay, so what does that mean? He goes, and he simplified it. He said, "You're a left winger, play left wing." Well, what does that mean? He said, "Skate, shoot, hit." Don't think, like, because when you start getting all worried about positions and all these different things, you when you think, you're not free, right? And then you tighten up, and your brain is slowing you down a little bit. So it goes back to what I was saying, for a coach, is if you could take players and give them individual coaching, and you're telling them, to keep it simple, do 3-4 things to keep your game simple, and everything comes from there. And I would say it's the same thing from a team. It's like, don't overthink, like, because what happens is if you try to complicate the game, which it's not that complicated, to be quite honest with you, um, like, yes, your D zones and your offensive zones and power plays can get pretty what's the intricate, but it doesn't have to be for 12-year-olds. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the basics. So we did that one on, we drew some out on the pads offense, defense, neutral zone, and stuff like that. And it's like that's the basics. You can change it. Funny thing is, Charlie had a meeting with his coach yesterday, and he said jokingly, he goes, "Hey, I changed our whole D zone because of your dad's podcast." but you can play with that kind of stuff. But like the basics are the basics. I wouldn't get too caught up in how
Yeah.
much the game's changed, because really the as the saying goes, the more it changes, the more it stays the same. You know, like you want to play fast as you can. You want to be a hard puck moving team. You want to, if there's an element of physicality, you want to be able to use that to your advantage. It's getting shots on net, and then it's when you try to think too much, sometimes it's just too much. You know, simplify. Sorry, I'm going to just say one thing here. It's like a lot of people in youth hockey are trying to design these power plays that are so uh, like mirroring kind of a NHL power play. It's like that's not even possible. Well, it might be somewhat possible depending on your skill level, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, you don't need that.
Yeah, so a
Yeah.
lot of times it's just like get some traffic in front of the net, get some shots, and then back check hard if you lose the puck. It's like it's really not that hard. So now a guy that played a little bit, you should have a fairly good base of how the game is played. And if you don't, or if you feel like you're running out of information or you need more, then just watch some hockey, listen to some great in between period intermission stuff that where they go over some stuff, or you go on YouTube and you could look at a coaching clinic or pieces of it and just get some ideas, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, just to give him like something more concrete. What do you think about doing coaching clinics or courses or like coaching certifications, or even like if this would be assuming he wants to coach at a higher level, maybe being, depending how much time you have, being an assistant coach for like a higher level team, or like something where you're around someone that, like, putting yourself into a bigger pond, so to speak. What do you kind of think about those things, whether it's the clinics or certifications or that situation?
I think obviously it's good because there's information, right? Obviously, but a lot of the like this is just I'm being real. I like to be real. I think that's why people enjoy listening to us. It's like, yes, you can go to the high end coaching clinics, but a lot of the times you have, let's say, Bruce Boudreau coming in, an NHL coach for a long period of time, explaining their power play or their D zone or whatever, and it's like way beyond. It's information you don't need. So it's good to have the information, but it's like they're talking to a different language to a lot of different people. So you might go to a coach's clinic and think that you're getting information from the best people, and you are, but it might not be appropriate. That's number one. Number two is a lot of coaches clinics, just like any type of seminar, a lot of the times there's a lot of time filler stuff, a lot of stuff that is just to say we had a full day of stuff, and it could be exhausting. So but having said that, if you can go to that's why I never have a problem with reading a book, even though it might not be the greatest book. I might get one or two things. It might be like something like that. So if you can go somewhere and you're trying to if you can get one thing out of something, or two things out of something that is applicable to what you're doing, then it was worth it, right? So I think that's the coaches clinics and stuff like that are good, but don't expect to be a game changer. I think a lot of the times your best information is um, going to people that are in sort of your realm of coaching, because it's more relevant. So like to talk to an NHL coach or a college coach, they're going to be very smart and they could probably dumb it down, but they might not understand the intricacies of.
Yeah, maybe they lost touch.
Right.
They can't relate it anymore. Or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. So sometimes going to maybe a major midget or that's a different wrong word now, U16 or U15, U14 coach that has been coaching in a system for 5, 6, 7 years might be a lot more um, um, what's my word,
Useful, appropriate.
appropriate for what you're doing.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
for sure. Because I think the thing about the coaching clinic, because we were just talking about this the other day, even possibly doing one, because I think it would be helpful. Sometimes it's nice, just like going to school. Sometimes it's nice to just have someone lay it out for you. So it's hard to, because I know this just because being self-taught and most of the things that I know that have to do with training and hockey and whatever, it's hard to like get through the shit to figure out what is real information and what isn't. That can be hard. So if you don't have a really good, I'm not saying that I'm the best critical thinker ever, but if you don't have that kind of brain where you are like analyzing and you can say, okay, does this make sense? Ask questions, why, and then figure out what's good and what's not. If you don't have that, or you just don't want to do it, then sometimes it's good to find someone that just kind of feeds it to you, and you don't have to worry about putting it in a sequence that makes sense. Like someone does that work for you, and that's where I think that can be useful. But I think more than anything, like you're saying, is find a mentor, find someone that, or even just a group or like a community of people that you can bounce ideas off of for what's going on that's useful to you. I think that's where you learn the most is from those kinds of things. Like you can read a book as much as you want, but until you actually do things in practice, and if you're talking to someone who has done it or is doing it in practice, then you're getting real advice from someone that's done the thing, in addition to however you decide to supplement that, if it's a course or
Yeah.
get a certification or whatever. So
Well, and if you look at like again, just being honest about it, the Hockey Canada stuff, like some of it is good, but a lot of it's just like that's what they do and they charge money for
Yeah.
it, and it's just
Yeah, it's a moneymaker.
It's a moneymaker. USA, I was a speaker at one of them, at the USA ones, and there's a couple things that were okay, but it was like, okay, you put in 12 hours on the weekend to get certified, and it's like the information was not worth 12 hours.
Yeah, right.
You maybe had 3 hours of decent information.
Okay, next question. How much should coaches control or influence their players' training away from the rink? For example, telling them to shoot pucks, assigning video for them to watch, etc. I really like this question.
I
think it's a
really
good
like
question.
it too. Yeah, I really like it too. How much? Well, I think the key word is influence. Shoving it down people's throats is not the way to do it.
Yeah, I
but
think
influence.
like control and influence are two different words, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
that's an important thing to point out.
So I mean, I always look at coaching like being a dad, right? It's like
It is.
well, it is. It is. It really is.
Yeah.
So when you shove things down your kid's throat, they don't want it, right? Like eat your vegetables. Why? Because I said so. Take your hat off at the table. Why? I don't care about that, by the way. but that's a question, right? Like, sometimes we'll go to places and say, hey, you have to take your hat off. And like, my question is why? Like, and I'm not being disrespectful. My question
Yeah,
is,
you don't even wear a hat.
right. But like, why does it bother everybody, or what's the deal with that? And it's like, because it's rude. And I'm like, well, why is it rude? I don't know. So that when you're talking to a kid, that's what they're saying too. It's like, okay, I'll take my hat off. Like, why? So I think it's important that if that's a thing, explaining why the thing is. But anyways, it's about being, it's like parenting. So I think it's the way you say it. And for me, it's building that culture sort of thing, and explaining that, finding out kids and players why they're playing hockey, where they want to go with it, what dreams and goals they have with pursuing hockey. Because you can get on someone's case about did you watch a video, did you do this, did you do that, but if they're only committed to showing up to games and that's all they care about, like you're beating a dead horse right now, right? You're playing pool with a rope, not a freaking pool cue, right? So it's like you can't motivate, and you can't you're imposing a dream and on a kid. Whereas if you find out where they're at with where they want to go with the hockey, and how much they're willing to do, then you can nudge them into doing more, right? So it's like, are you shooting pucks? This is why you're going to shoot pucks. If you shoot, half an hour of pucks every single day, like think of how your shot's going to be later on in life. If you do some video, you're going to learn a little bit about hockey. If you do your yoga, you're going to be mobile, and you're probably going to be less injured. And you're going to move a little bit more freer. All those things are good things, but it doesn't matter to a guy that doesn't want to do it. For the kid that wants to impress the coach and has big dreams and goals, then those things are like music to his ears. So it's like, oh, that you're speaking my language, and I'm going to do that. I want to make you happy. I want to be an all-star player. I want to play in the NHL, and that's what the NHL guys do. And that's where they're going to be more receptive to hearing that kind of stuff. So I think it's important that you always lay those things out, but to have expectations that every kid's going to do it is probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw a book recommendation out there. Do you know which one I'm gonna say?
No.
Dale Carnegie.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah, it's a good book.
So
it's written in like 1427.
Yeah, it's super old.
Yeah,
but it's like, and it's a really easy read because it's all about this kind of stuff is like in a non-manipulative way. How do you get people like on your side or to do what you want them to do, or in the best way, not in the worst, right? And so it's a really easy read because it just gives you like some strategies for this kind of thing. It's like if you're trying to get buy-in, it's like here's some ways that could work. That doesn't mean they will, but like here's some ways to increase your chances, and here's some things that definitely won't work. And that's kind of applicable in this situation because whether it's another coach, another player, or talking to parents or whatever, you want to know some of these things to get buy-in to what you're trying to do. But so that's a good book I would recommend. I'll put a little picture of it on here. What I've learned, really valuable lesson of just a few years ago from training, and I'm sure you've learned it way before this, but like ultimately you can't control the decisions that kids are going to make. Ultimately, for a short period of time, you can force kids to do things because they think you're the boss and that there's major consequences and whatever. So you can play that card if you want to, but ultimately you don't have the control. So all you can do is try to point them in the direction that you think is right. But then you have to be okay with leaving them to make their own choices. You just have to, because not every kid, even though they all say they want to be hockey players, not every kid wants to be a hockey player.
Well, as you're speaking about this, we said this earlier in the summer, how I look at guys that are this close. I'm talking a little bit of consistency of doing something, and they will sign an NHL contract, and they've been told that, right? There's a team literally telling a kid, I hate using the word literally, by the way, telling a player that's 18, 19 years old that, yes, you came to camp, we really like you, we want to see this, this, and this, or you might have to get in a little bit better shape or a little bit stronger, and if you do these things, you're going to sign, and they go, okay, that's what I got to do, and then the next weekend they come home, instead of looking at the next 4 weeks or whatever and saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to sign an NHL contract, and they come home and life gets in the way, or the dream, that thing that I always say, that dream is just not big enough to overcome an obstacle, and that obstacle could just simply be, hey, you want to go golfing?
Yeah, want to go to the cottage?
Do you want to go to the cottage? Do you want to go golfing? Do you want to go skip the workout? Like finding reasons not to do the thing you have to do. So if you're talking to and NHL players do it a lot too. It's like, I'm not doing it today or whatever. So that's if you're talking about a mature adult or getting to be a mature adult with this close to signing an NHL contract to make money, like, which is the hardest thing to do in hockey. To make $1 as a hockey player is extremely difficult. If those people can't get motivated, then and they have a maturity about them, then the expectation of a 12-year-old to do that, I mean,
Right.
wow, right? Yeah. I mean, because they can't even put their brain on straight.
Yeah.
If you can put your brain on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Next question.
Okay.
What are your general thoughts on parent coaching? You touched on this in previous segments, but it'd be great to get a more clear picture of the pros and cons for any given level. That's a good question.
Okay. I like it. Parent coaches definitely get a kick in the ass all the time. It's like everyone assumes that they're only there for their own kid, and many times that's the truth. But the bottom line is especially in the youth levels, you have to have parent coaches, or else you won't have any coaches.
Yeah.
So I think that if we can, as organizations, if we can do a better job of vetting out who's there for the right reasons, which that might not even be possible, then that would be better. Preferably someone with a little bit of background, but like when we're talking 8-year-olds or whatever, it's like it's not critical.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to cut you off because
Sure.
Does it even matter? Like, let's say the guy's not there for the right reason. It's like, what's the wrong reason when you're 8? It's like I want to get my 8-year-old to be the best 8-year-old. It's like, does that actually matter? So I don't know, unless I don't like using the word toxic, but unless it's like a toxic person,
Yeah.
where they're just a bad person,
Yeah.
Even if they're a terrible coach when they're 8, it's like, is this like a make or break thing?
So this is a hard thing to answer.
Yeah.
For everybody,
right? Yeah,
because
for sure.
people have different views, right? So if we sit here and say, so I have my views, and you have yours, and some other dad has another one, and some people say, oh no, at 8 years old, they need coaches that are teaching them the game, teaching them everything properly and all that stuff. And it's critical to having a great 8-year-old coach. Whereas my belief would be you're not really learning hockey at that age. You're just playing. And it, to your point, does it matter how much hockey you're teaching? Because I see it on a daily basis. Like when people get to junior level, it's like the hockey that they learned for the most part. And then there are definitely tons of exceptions of, ex NHLers or ex super coaches coaching youth hockey that the coaching was great. But the reality is when you get to the junior pro levels or in college levels, it's the whole different systems. It's not the hockey that you were growing up with. It's a lot different. So yeah. So being a parent coach, being young, it doesn't matter to me. I want to specify that it doesn't matter to me, because for the most part, there's 3 lines on a team, not 4. So you can't really, I mean, there are guys out there, but you can't really bench someone. There's only three lines.
Yeah, so I mean,
You know
like,
what I
unless
mean?
you're a
So,
bad person, it's
right,
like if it's just Joe
right,
Dad that knows nothing and he wears jeans on the ice,
yeah,
it's like it doesn't matter, man.
right,
For the most part,
yeah, for the most part, for
unless
the
your
most
kid
part.
doesn't like it, right? If the kid isn't having fun or doesn't like it or whatever, then you can make a change. But it's like how serious do you need to be when you're 8? But then what about if you get a little bit if we get a little bit older now, and it's like it's pretty straightforward if the kid or the parent is obviously preferentially giving their kid that doesn't deserve it, because this is the other part too, right? Like sometimes the parent coach's son or the player is actually one of the best players. So like if that kid is one of the best players, you can't just be pissed off at the parent coach because their kid plays a lot. It's like, yeah, but he's actually one of the best players. It's particularly older ages when like winning starts to be more of a factor. So like
Yeah.
what do you think about that kind of
Well,
situation?
well, it's like the best example I could use is me and my kid. Like very very reluctantly coached him in U10 and U9, I think it was. And that was from the parents saying, please, please, please. And now I have some background in hockey, so it was appropriate. But for me, I didn't, and so I don't know if the answer is this. It's the pros and cons because you can make a pro or con out of anything, in my opinion. So for me, I'm just saying me. Um, I could have been like I don't know if there would have been a better coach for him. Although when he got to bantam, uh, Matt that was coaching him was the perfect coach for that group of kids. Not, and I'm not saying for my son, I'm saying for that group of kids, and it was good for my kids. So, anyways, my point of this is when I reluctantly coached my kid, it was very good for them because I've said in podcasts and I've told you several times is that I asked them because it wasn't a very good hockey club. They were just local players. Um, do you guys want to learn hockey or are we just here to have fun? And I meant that question because I'll be appropriate to what you guys would like. And they wanted to learn some hockey. So I mixed in like a lot of fun, a little bit of teaching and taught them how to play hockey. So it was good for the time. I knew after that for my own son, I thought that it would be better for my son to experience someone else, whether it was good or bad. I didn't care what the coach was like. Yeah, it didn't matter to me. So when he was 11 years old, it was horrible. Like if I look at the coaching itself, it was absolutely horrible for 2 or 3 years. So did I freak out and want to be a coach? No, because that's life. You know what I mean? That's life. So if I went in there and always just tried to take care of my kid, like number one, that's all I would ever talk about with him. Then if I was his coach, we'd get in the car, we'd talk about hockey. I'd be thinking about the team because that's my nature is to help the team all the time. So our relationship would only be hockey, and that's not what I wanted. Number 2 or 3 or 100, whatever number we're at, is I wanted my son to not be able to come to me and suggest anything about the team. Do you know what I mean? Like Dad, if this happened,
Yeah, true. Yeah.
him talking. But I wanted him to have a coach like him because they liked him
Right.
as a person,
Yeah,
as a
just a good kid.
player,
Yeah.
as a leader, or I wanted someone to dislike him because he was a good player or he had flaws in his game or flaws in his personality, and I wanted him to deal with that, and he did. So, like for example, the first year that he moved, like I only coached him for 2 years, so it doesn't matter. But the years before, it was horrible, but they were nice people, and he liked them. He was a little kid. So after that, he was getting really serious about hockey, and it was horrible. And the first one, it was like, no, we're playing. Everyone gets the same, and it doesn't matter. And it was like he couldn't figure it out, and he thought this guy was a weird dude. Like, what's wrong with this guy? It's like, yeah, deal with it, because that's what's going to happen. And you don't know, right? If you're coaching your son all the time, then he doesn't get to experience anything negative or positive, or something on his own merit, or getting, like you said, if you're one of the best players, it's like it will always come back as, well, yeah, it's because your dad's the coach. So I just wanted to get rid of that stuff, and for me, it was the right thing to do, because um, you're going to get that, right? You're going to get the negative and positive,
Yeah,
because
you want to
just
learn the lesson.
because.
Yeah.
So I just wanted my son, and I would suggest that to people, is let someone else give an opinion of your son instead of yourself. And a lot of times you try to protect your kids from you shield them from that hurt, or that ice time, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, you let them learn it. Let them
feel it a
feel
bit. Yeah.
But so I said all that, like, don't coach your kid. But then if I would have coached my son, it would have been very good for him as well.
No, this
for
was
me.
going to be my follow up before I move to the next one, was just going to be maybe if you can finish on, if you are the coach that has the kid on the team, because you've, like this guy said, we touched on it a bit before, but how do you balance your kid versus other kids? And let's assume your kid is actually good, right? Because if they're not that good, it's obvious. It's like you can't give them preferential treatment and give them stuff they don't deserve. Like, those are easy. But if your kid's actually one of the better players, it's like, if your kid is actually the leader on the team, if he's actually the captain, whatever that means, if he's actually one of those kind of guys, how do you balance that now if you're dad?
Yeah, well, from my experience, it's your kid gets screwed, because I was aware of that. It's like, if I was to put my kid, which I did at times because he was good, if I put him in a really tight game to get that extra ice, to get a goal or to defend or whatever, then it was like, oh yeah, of course he's giving his kid ice. But so I was always feeling like, God, I can't do this right now. And I shortchanged my son when I was coaching him, because I wasn't able to actually coach him, because I was not worried about everybody else, but I wanted everybody else to get it. And if I could spend extra time with him, the appearance of, oh yeah, he's here for his son, was in the back of my mind. And I don't think you ever get rid of that unless you don't care. But I did. And I'm not saying I cared and that's better, because sometimes if you just don't care and you just do your thing, that might be better too. But yeah, so if your kid's good, it's like, I deal with that today. You've heard this how many times? The only reason my son got drafted was because of me. Wow. The only reason that he's playing somewhere is because of me. It's like, I have the connections to get him signed and be an effective player in the OHL because of me. It's like, that's ridiculous. Now I will say that that's a very fortunate situation for my son to be in, to be born into a hockey world where he's around people and has connections and hears things that most kids don't hear until they're 25 years old, right? That's an advantage for sure. But the kid has to do the work, not the dad. So I can talk but think about how crazy that is. Like, do you think I can call Montreal Canadiens right now and say, hey guys, my son's really good? Or I got friends all over. It's just, my son's, you got to watch my son. It's like, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah.
We did. And if you could influence anything, there is only so much you can influence. But again, a lot of people wouldn't even believe this, but this. I don't do that. I have. It's his job to do, because I know how hard this is. And if you make anything easier, the process, if you try to make the process easier, then you're only hurting your son.
Yeah. Well, and I one extreme example, I'm not going to use any names, but that I can think of is dad that's like absolutely crazy influence for his kid, and he's got some money.
Yep.
And the kid still, so the influence would be, I want my kid to be in the NHL, and the influence actually got the kid pretty far.
Yep.
But now he still has to make the jump to play at the NHL level.
Yeah.
It's like,
dad doesn't make
Dad
it
doesn't
for you.
make it for
No.
you, right?
You
So it
can
doesn't.
open up. Hey, you could open up some opportunities if you
Yeah.
really wanted.
And that's the most extreme example.
Yeah.
Like that's the most extreme example
Yeah.
where you're willing to toss around tens, hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars, maybe
Yeah.
more,
Yeah, who knows?
to get some opportunities, and maybe the kid was good enough to get a few of those on his own or whatever. So it's not even necessarily that that behavior is the reason he got to where he is, because maybe the kid actually is good enough too. But it's like at a certain point, it comes out. It's like there's a line that you'll always run up against. It doesn't matter how much money you have, you know. So that's funny. And even as a trainer, I do the same thing, because there's some. It's funny. We talked about optics the other few episodes ago about like you're a coach with parent friends, but the optics with your kid. Do you think that that's a little bit different than the optics we talked about before, where we were saying, you got to be aware of your friendships and how that looks on the team. Whereas now, if we're talking about, with my kid on the team, it sounds like you were more aware of the optics of that, so you were harder on your kid than you would have been. So maybe what about the kind of the difference between that? Because even as a trainer, like I do that with Charlie particularly, because everyone knows like I've been with Charlie since he was a little boy, so I have the best relationship with him. And even I'm sure Charlie would even say like I'm a pain in his ass all the time, right? Like I won't give the guy a compliment to his very very rare. I'll say great job, even though he's one of our best guys, So I very rarely will give the kid a compliment to his face on purpose, because I know that even if he deserves it, number one, I just want to be harder on him because he's actually in a position where he needs to have somebody on him. But more than that, it's just I don't need the 25 other guys looking and being like, this guy gets all the special
I know.
shit.
See,
And like, right?
that's just the way
So
it
but is that
rolls.
right? This is my question. Like, is that right? Like, should I, if he deserves, if he, you're the coach on
I
the
know what
team,
you're saying,
right?
yeah.
Like, if he deserves to be that, do you just let him and the optics don't matter? Like, you can be aware of the optics, but do you not act on that? Like, as a coach, because I'm sure when you coached Charlie when he was young, it's like you still put him in the dominant positions when it was called for.
Yep.
Like you
Yep.
didn't limit, or you're
No,
not
no.
trying to screw them just because of the optics,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So you're aware of it, but you're still giving them what they deserve
For sure.
to a degree.
Yeah. But you're just aware of it. That's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I think the conversation piece of it too. It's like, you say, I'm gonna make an example out of you to the kids, because if I don't do it to you, then whatever. But if I do it to you, then at least we can talk about it after, and like I can make sure you understand like what's going on and those kinds of things.
Yeah, that dynamic of the favorite guys or whatever, like it's a weird thing because like there are like, just taking me out of the equation, like, so when you have the fitness groups in here or whatever, there are guys that that you have to compliment because they're sensitive or whatever, but then there's guys that you're going to gravitate to because maybe it's just the personality. And so you got a kid that has a good personality that could come in a good mood, that has some zip to him, that you're not trying to pull it out of him. He has the good posture, the good energy. So you like him automatically. And then the work ethic's there. He's good to other people. So you spend time to him talking, and they might ask you questions, and like other guys can look at it and say, well, that's his favorite guy. It's like, well, yeah, because he's like, I'm not saying he's our favorite, but it's just like he's got everything you want in a player.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys like that,
or a athlete or person that just makes everything better. So of course he's going to get attention, and he it's like it's not a vanilla guy, right? It's like same in hockey, right? You look at a player, it's like a vanilla guy doesn't get the attention as a guy that actually does something, right? That does something. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is.
I think the optics of it still, it's the same as we said before. It's like, who cares? It's like give the kid what they deserve. You can be aware of it, but it's the special treatment shit. You have to make sure that that's not there. So, can you do a segment discussing lines a bit more? So like first line, second line, third line. How can you make lines successful or get buy-in when kids for the most part know the first line, second line, third line dynamic? How can the third line players be motivated if they know, or when they know, that the first line players are better? Quotes. So we talked a little bit about this in one of the episodes. I forget which one.
That was a few weeks ago.
Yeah. So we were talking about it more at the parents. Like, just because your kid's not on the first line doesn't mean they're not one of the top three players. Like, it's not always the top three players of the first line. But if you're a third line, if we focus on the third line guys, like normally, if we're being honest, on a team, if you're the third line guys, you're the weaker players, more or less, even in AAA, as you get a little bit older, at least, right? So as the coach, what's the teaching you can do there for your players, or what's the message you can give those players to make them feel like I'm not I'm not worse, but I mean like they are though. So it's like what's the message that you give the players there?
I don't know if I don't know if it has to be like spilled out and make everybody feel like everyone's on the first line. That's not what it is. It is I think when we do anything, we know talent when we see it. We see hard work when we notice hard work when we see it. We know who can do things without anybody explaining it. I mean, if you're a true third line guy, that just simply means that you're replaceable. That's just obvious to me. But as a coach, so we're talking coaching, is it's the more upfront and more open you are, and the more that you can have a conversation, especially in youth hockey. But I would even say that later, and like junior and stuff, the more that you can explain positioning or your rank on the team, and it's not rank, it's more your role. The more that you can do that, the better. So I have never had a problem explaining to guys that they're these guys can score goals. You struggle with it, but here's what you're going to do to be successful. I have never had a problem with that. And
But do you explicitly point out that maybe not in these exact words, but like you're just not as good as these guys? Like it doesn't have to be in those
no,
words, but like the kid knows.
the kids know, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't use those words, but I would just say like, you know,
Do you more just like focus on their strengths and like
yeah,
just center it
100%.
on that and be
Yeah,
like, if you want to be
100%.
successful, this is what you need to do,
Yeah, 100%.
instead of like contrasting them or comparing them to the other guys.
Yeah, like yes and no. I mean, yes and no. Uh, you've got guys that are just like great skaters, smart, score, put pucks in the net, and make plays and back check, and they do everything right. Everyone knows that. So I don't have to. You don't have to lay that out. And I guess my point is you don't necessarily address it. There's like I've never used first line, second line, third line. Anyways, these are lines, and those lines are interchangeable. And like from a coach's perspective, and being very frank about it, is you're looking for chemistry. Like I said in that podcast, just because you have three guys that are the best forwards on your team doesn't necessarily mean that that makes it a first line, because there might not be chemistry, because they might not be able to play with each other. So having a mixture of and sometimes that is the best chemistry is the top three guys, but having um, so a bottom like if you got nine forwards on a three line team, it doesn't mean that you can't have a left winger or a centerman not playing with the top guy, because if his role is there, it's like what's the difference, right? But no matter how you do it, everyone knows who the better players are for the most part. If you don't, then you're being blind, right?
So sorry, I think side question to this
Yeah.
then would be, just as the coach, did you set things up on your team where it, without calling it first line, second line, third line, did you kind of rank it like this is the best line, this is the second best line, this is the third best line, or did you try to like balance three lines? Because I feel like those are two different philosophies.
At different times, different things.
Yeah.
Some games I wanted to like, of course, listen, you are going to try to get, like if you're about winning, you are trying to get your best lines. If you can get your best players to play together, then if you have a decent team,
And youth,
those guys, those guys are going to probably get you most of your goals. So if it works, that's great. So then you could have your scoring line, right? Then if you have the other guys that are like kind of just good players, that could be your second line. And then you could have your third line guys, and you give them a role of just don't get scored on, more or less. And you kind of, like, a lot of people say that, just like your goal is to get it out, if you get goals, but like here's your role is to make the other team's life miserable, right? It's I would do that. But then so you try to get that one line that can just roll and be a threat. But if it's like you could always try something else, or you could say, you know what, this guy is looking pretty good. Or this guy might work better here, and you mix it up, and you have like more of a chemistry thing going on for three lines. It depends on what you want out of your team.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like a loaded question, and
you can like
it's a philosophy.
Yeah, because if you have a really weak player, you can kind of hide that guy if you put him on
Yeah.
the first line.
Yeah,
As an
and you can give
example.
him like Johnny is going to be first on the puck every time. We know that, and he's maybe okay. So let's say he's the worst guy on the team, but he's a good forechecker, right? And good hard worker, but has no brain. Well, he's first on the puck no matter where we are on the ice. Okay, fine. Just get the puck, do your job, encourage him to do it, and then maybe the other guys take care of the rest because they have the brains and the skill, right? It's a thing that I don't like to tell people how they should do it because everyone has different ways. But I don't think naming lines is a good thing, but people can figure it out. Like it is what it
Yeah,
is. It
yeah,
just is what it is.
Cool. Next one. You mentioned that sometimes your best player isn't a team player. What if the coach doesn't bother to address it? Are they therefore a shitty coach, or are there circumstances where this is justified? That's a hard question.
Just say it again because I want to make sure I get the question.
So we did a segment, or in one of the episodes again, because I remember the clip because I thought it was a good point. Is that sometimes coaches struggle disciplining or keeping kids accountable because sometimes that kid is their best player. So if the kid's a pain in the ass, not a good team player, but he's just their best player, sometimes that kid can get away with a lot more because you kind of need that guy, or you feel like you need that guy to get you goals. So this question is, if the coach doesn't address that kind of behavior, does that make them a bad coach, or are there certain situations where you do let it go as the coach because you need the guy or something?
There are certain situations where you let it go. We have a guy that I've trained that plays in the OHL that does absolutely nothing, but he can put points up. Right? He's lazy. He will do not one thing that takes effort. If he can take a shift without taking a stride, he will. But he can put himself in situations to make plays and puts himself in the right spot to score goals. And basically, I was talking to one of the management, we'll call it management of the team, and they said, "Yeah, we just know what we're getting from him, and the coaches do, and it's like, just let him be." But then there's times where they just said, "We can't do this anymore," or when the games are in situations where it's like you need hardworking guys, he doesn't see ice, right? So that's that. So that's at a high level. I think as a coach, you're not doing yourself, your team, and the player any justice by just letting it go. It goes back to being a parent again, right? If your kid is take hockey out of the equation, and your kid is getting 75s to 80s in school, and he's taking hard classes, but he does zero homework and all that stuff. Those habits is like you're getting by talent. And what's going to happen to you later, son, is if you don't understand how to do the work and push yourself, then all the talent in the world is going to equal nothing. Or you'll get by, but you won't be as successful as you would like to be. So I think it's very, very important that you don't give, it's not like you have to give them shit all the time, but it's about bringing the best out of them and explaining to them. And these guys are hard because they just sometimes just don't get it, don't want to get it. But you have to do your job as a coach to let them know. Because so let's just say you have that kid that can just do whatever he wants and he doesn't pick up pucks. You blow the whistle to talk to the kids and he's not looking at you and he shoots a puck and the attitude sucks, but he's just really good. Okay, fine. If you don't address those things and talk to him properly, what's going to happen at some point? He's going to hear it. So I would rather lay that out for him. If I was coaching him for 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever, I want him to hear that before. It doesn't have to be negative. It just could be simply, you pull him aside or center him out, whatever, and say, what's going to happen is one day talent, your attitude is going to overshadow your talent, or they get to the OHL or college and then it gets addressed there. You don't want that to be the first time they hear it. You want to be the dad that has told them over and over and over, so that at some point it's like, oh, okay, I've heard this before, and they may never do anything about it, but you've done your job, right? And because every now and then you'll get a kid that it clicks one day and they go, oh yeah, I got to be a hard worker too, because now guys are catching up, or they just get it. Yeah, so I just think it's really important, that communication piece, that honesty piece. That Eric, you're a good player to a degree, but God, you piss me off.
Yeah,
I don't like it. I don't like it, and
that's important.
I can tell you right now, if you want to move on in hockey, that attitude is going to bite you in the ass, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to take a few minutes to explain it to you, and you're going to hear it over and over and over until I see a change. You may never see it, but he's heard it, and you've done the right thing. That's the way I look at it.
Sweet. I have a 10-year-old son that's been attending the same company camps for a few years. He likes it, but I feel like there may be better options out there. The camp seems to be good quality, but I think some experimenting with other camps might be worth a try at this point. How would you go about vetting whether or not another camp is worth it at this age? So, 10-year-old kid, been going to the same camps kind of thing for a few years. Kid likes it, and dad seems like, or mom, whoever wrote this, seems like it's quality, but he wants to experiment with other companies, other trainers, etc.
Yeah.
So what's your vetting process?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. First of all, go try anything you want. What is quality? What is good? That's the main question, and how important is it to be good? I could tell you this, because we just recently had a younger group, and we were teaching, or we're doing drills that were they were very good drills for them for that age. It wasn't over their head or anything. And a lot of the questions were, when are we playing a game? When are we doing this? When are we doing that? Was the main thing. So I did a thing. I don't like to use the thing a relay race, but it was similar to that, where it was like a couple skill things in there that was hidden, and it had to be done for time. So 2 teams against each other, and they had to back check back hard and all that stuff. And when we did that, they loved it. That's what they wanted to do. So all the stuff quality work that I was doing was over their head. They liked it. Like, I'm not saying it this way. I gotta say it this way. They loved it. The parents were saying, "Oh man, they're loving it. It's so much fun." And I'm like, okay, that's great, good. Because for me, it's actually hard to judge if a 10 or 11-year-old is if I'm doing a good job for them, because it's like I'm not teaching quite as much. I'm just giving them the basics and the repetition and a little bit of correction. But I don't know if that's fun for them or not. But they loved it. But anyways, they loved playing the game. So when I look at that question, a 10-year-old he seems to like the camp. It's like he likes the camp probably because he's just on the ice doing whatever. He doesn't necessarily know. I'm not saying your kid's stupid. I'm just saying he doesn't necessarily know that this is a good camp. He might be having fun, but if you went across the street to the other guy that's doing a camp, maybe the exact same or completely different, he might say, "Oh yeah, this is fun." So the answer to that question is, yeah, go and try some things if you like, because it's not gonna hurt him either way, whether it's just skating, stick handling, small area games, whatever. But definitely go try things, and then from a parent's point of view, look at it and just see if they're getting anything out of it from the instructors. Like, are they actually teaching them anything? Because it's very easy, as I said several times, is to work them really hard or to keep them really, really busy on the ice, but there's zero quality to it. And then, having said that, at 10 years old, just being around the puck is probably in skating and doing like different agility stuff and all that stuff is good for them anyways. So the quality of it isn't necessarily the quality of the teaching isn't necessarily the most important thing. So and I would say this, like when someone's 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, like it's less important that you're teaching the details, because they don't really care. Yeah. They don't really care. Right. They just want the puck and shoot. And when you're talking to them, you can see it. They're like, their attention is 13 seconds long. Yeah. I don't know if that's a number,
but if so just in terms of like the trying other camps part of it, have you noticed, like for PowerTech as an example, have you noticed the people's word of mouth is a good data point to take in about people's camps?
Can be and can't be.
Yeah, right? Like it's not really like that clear. I was wondering, because I'm wondering, like, because I know a lot of people, because we have like a little referral box when people sign up for our camps, and a lot of times people just say like, someone told me or whatever, which is a way to hear about it, but it's not necessarily an indicator of quality. So I wouldn't just rely on that. But I think it's important that you know what you're looking for, to your point. Like, how do you define quality that's age appropriate for those kids, you know? So whether it's you stick with the same person you've been going to, or you go to a new one, it's like, does a kid enjoy what he's doing? And if he's on the ice, to your point, probably he'll have fun. But are they getting the reps and the touches? And is there like some semblance of teaching for that age when they're that young. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the way to look for it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you could take referrals. Like this cut my own head off here, but there's several times people would say to me like, "This is a great camp," and I go, "It's just a camp. This one was not great, but maybe it's because it was high energy, or they don't know the difference, or this is the best camp they've seen." That's a possibility. It's when they get a little bit older where you're teaching things. So like a lot of those people that came from out of town, remember they were just like, this is off the charts good, because like my son's never learned that. He'd never been shown that, how to shoot, how to protect, all these different things. It's like, okay, that's when you start to get the teaching. And you get kids that are receptive to it because they're close to the age where they're going to be moving on, and it's important now, right? Because like it's so funny, right? Like if you do the same drills as to a 15-year-old as you do to a 10-year-old, it can't be. Like, well, no, it can be, but the drills are probably not that good. So like if I'm working with a defenseman who's 10 as opposed to a defenseman at 15, well, I can teach that 15-year-old or 14-year-old how to walk the line, probably how to keep their head up, and circumstances of why they're doing it, right? And then when they shoot a puck, it's like the puck is got some velocity to it. It's not a knuckleball to the top of the circles, or right. It's a shot that they've got strength and they got skill, and so like you can tweak those things. So a 10-year-old might have a decent shot. Typically, it's not great. Like obviously, they're 10.
Dude, they're just trying to hit the
They're
crossbar.
trying to get, yeah, they're trying to get the, but they're not really caring about the details of why would I walk the line? Why would I have my eyes up? What am I looking for? I just want to get the shot off. Like, so
Yeah.
those details are irrelevant almost.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where the difference, as they're getting older and they're good players that are into it, that's where you can do the teaching, and it becomes, now that's a good camp. So for me, the short story long is there's less details in the teaching when they're young, because there's the attention span and the desire to understand the game at that point. It's just about getting reps. So you could go to 10 different camps and they're all going to be probably pretty good, I think.
Yeah, right. This is an interesting question. Our area has 2 AAA teams that aren't very good. They're consistently in the bottom rankings of their league, while the state-bound AA teams are ranking
What
much
does
higher.
state-bound mean?
I'm assuming that's like in the US of A, in their state, but I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
AA teams are ranking much higher in the state. Would it make more sense to go with a AA team, or does the status of AAA make more of a difference to this player? So
Is there an age?
there's not an age. So that's that's where I was going to start with it. They don't point out what age we're talking about. But we could play both sides. We could talk younger than older. So the fact that this is a question for the states to me isn't really relevant. It's more just like, is the AA versus AAA label important, and when is it important? Unless there's a different dynamic with AA to AAA in the states, which I wouldn't know. But
Yeah, I found there's a big difference when I was in the States.
in the level of play.
Yeah.
So it'd be similar to here then.
Yeah, I would say the AAA, like again. Anyways, from what I saw in Michigan was that there's no real boundaries unless that's changed. So you can have a pretty good AA team, or they call them travel as well. So
But that'd be the same as here, though. Like not the boundaries thing, but like you can
Yeah.
have a really good, when the kids are young, AA teams can be pretty good. But then once you're 13, 14, 15, it's hard to find a AA team that's actually really good.
Yeah, unless
you know?
they start picking from
Right.
different places. So yeah, here's the thing: the AAA is important, especially as you get older, to play at a good level, and if you have a desire of moving on, like 100%, like you'd rather play AAA if you can.
Even if the team sucks.
Well, yeah, that's okay. Who cares?
Like you actually kind of have to be at the AAA level at a certain point if you want to move on.
Yeah,
like, there's not many AA 16-year-olds that are going on, kind of thing.
They're right. It's more rare. Yeah, for sure. But like, I think the most important thing is that if your son has talent and it works hard and wants to move, like has a goal of something, then getting to the AAA level would be important at 13 for sure. Maybe 12, 13 years old. And the more important thing about it is, because there are guys that go double A or
Yeah, there's
travel
exceptions.
and
Yeah.
they go to high school, like especially in the United States of America, is they have a lot of different options. Like high school sports is a big thing; it's an important thing. So it's they have a lot of wiggle room to develop, right? Um, so I would say I forget what I was saying.
You're saying the kids that are playing
Oh,
double A young
got it.
jumping
No,
at
I
12,
got it. So
13.
what's more important is your environment. So it's just a commitment level, right? So I see it like just locally, the kids that get to play or are talented enough to play or whatever the thing is to get to the AAA level, there's more of a commitment and there's a more desire to typically to play, to be more committed as a hockey player. Whereas a lot of the kids in just the lower level travel is like they play hockey because they like hockey, but it's not something that they're eat, breathe, and sleep hockey, right? Whereas more of the Triple A's, you have that environment where the kids are like all about hockey or mostly about hockey. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, so to sum up, the label kind of matters at
At some point.
some point,
Yeah.
right? Okay, I coached U13 AA, and I have that same team this year. One kid was a particular issue for us, but he's a good player. He doesn't seem receptive to instruction, poor work ethic, and very little compete. If I want to have a better collective mindset on our team, does it make sense to cut the kid and take a player with a lower skill level?
That's a
That's a good
question. Yeah.
question.
No, it's a good question. I had one the other day. Someone asked me that.
Oh, similar kind of question.
Yeah, very not the same, but fairly similar.
Mhm.
And actually, with the one that I had, he said the player's a nightmare, is what he said. And he was the coach was fairly negative, like not being he was a bad person. He was like it's just see
Didn't have good
in the
things to
text it
say.
was like
Yeah.
what do I do? Is it even though he's a good player, could I cut him? Like should I cut him? And my answer is like if that person is like here's the thing. Coaching a player that every single time or mostly every single time they come in with a bad attitude or they don't listen or they're disruptive or they don't compete, it's just frustrating, man. It's just frustrating and you just it grates on your last nerve, but it's not typically good for the team. So if you have this is just me, I'm a firm believer that if you can't be a good teammate and you can't be get along in a group or whatever, I actually don't want you on my team, for me. So I would say that there's a point where talent talent isn't the only thing for me. I'd rather have good kids. I'd rather have kids that want to work, and I'd rather give an opportunity to someone that has a desire to get better than someone that wants to just be on his own page and be a pain in the ass. And you know what? Whatever. I think it's a good life lesson for the kid too. It's like until you figure this out, you have no place on my team.
Well, and it makes it hard to do your job as the coach. Yeah, because it's like so the other kids suffer and it wastes your time. Like it makes you hard. It makes it hard to coach. And like maybe people that are teachers would know this. If you have the pain in the ass kid in the classroom, it's like I'm trying to teach the times tables, man. Can you just shut up? And it makes it really difficult. And if everyone else takes a hit for it.
Yeah, my word that I use is disrespectful. When a teacher's talking to you or a coach is talking to you, there really should be no distractions. You should be, if you have respect for your coach or you have respect for your teammates or you have self-respect, is understanding that this person's in charge, given their time or they're in charge of you or whatever. You need to listen to the words and pay attention and do as said. You can question things, that's fine, but it's a very important thing, and it's like you said, it'll just ruin everything for everybody.
And the tone of like underneath, I could be reading this wrong, but the tone of it's kind of sounds like they've tried.
Well,
You know what I mean?
and
Because that's the other point. It's
well,
like
and that's
you tried to teach the kid, and he's just not.
Yes,
That's
and
the
that's
other
what
thing,
we were
right?
saying earlier. Is like maybe the kid has never heard it. That's why you always have the conversation. Say, okay, Eric, come here for a second. Here's what's pissing me off, or this is I can't have this. You have to do that. You have to individually coach the kid. Obviously, in this situation sounds like he has several times. Maybe it was done incorrectly or without maybe like just telling him what to do, but having an honest conversation and maybe the warning or the whatever you want to call it, let them know where your head's at, and then if they can't deal with that, then so be it. Like I've got some kids, a couple drafted, that I don't want them on my ice. I don't. because I'll show the simplest drill and they're looking somewhere else because they already know everything. Like just that alone, are you kidding me? You want to move on in hockey? Your parents just paid for this. You're out here and you're too smart to. You're already too smart for me. And then we do the drill and you did it wrong. You go, well, what am I supposed to do here? It's like, well, I explained it for 30 or a minute and a half, and everybody said, yeah, but you were looking somewhere else. So I don't have time. You figure it out now. I don't have time for you, man.
Yeah. The caveat on that is obviously like you have to have tried to help the kid. That's like number one. So this is a interesting question as well. Good questions, guys. Jeez. With the age of checking being older, so pause on that. When I played, it was checking right away. Now it's minor bantam U14, I think is the first year.
I just heard that they're trying to move it up another
Again?
year.
Really?
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah.
So, anyways, with the age of checking being older, do you have any resources on how to teach this properly? Or what would you do with a first year hitting team in terms of practicing or preparing for it? Good question.
Good question, and probably most people won't like my answer.
I'll like it. I know I'll like it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's funny to me because, like, yeah, as you said, this is a big argument, right? They should take it out of hockey until whatever. You don't need to hit that much anymore. Should you do it younger? Should you do it older? Like it's a big time question. So I've never played a hockey game without hitting. I started organized hockey when I was 4, and when I played, we had plastic helmets and just a mouth guard to cover our teeth. So we didn't have a face mask either. Yeah, so I actually had a couple cuts on my face when I was 4. Things have changed, obviously, and maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but the part that I don't like, and I know this rubs some people the wrong way, the part that I don't like about not having contact in hockey, this is just my opinion, is that when I see people getting their first year of body checking, I see kids like now it's like at 13, you have some kids that have hit puberty and their testosterone's high and they can't wait. Like they actually, I want to kill someone. I can't wait to hammer someone. Right. And that's okay. It's hockey. Like it's like in boxing. If you took away, we don't actually connect with punches until they're 16. It's like, well, you're not really boxing. And I'm not saying you're not really playing hockey, but it changes the game. So now you get a puberty guy and a late bloomer guy. There could be 60-pound difference. And it is
And
like
now there's hitting. First
now
time
it's
seeing
like
it.
yeah, for the first time it's like it can be not scary might be the word for some kids.
Oh yeah. Definitely more of a challenge.
Yeah.
When now there's such a gap.
Yeah.
With some kids,
Yeah. Having said that, to the question now is like, do you have anything to prepare them or practice? It's like you can. I mean, I think it's important to teach them how to protect yourself when you are on the boards. But to me, those aren't the worst hits. So that's why I'm always like, from a young age, when I teach kids, it's about having your head up. Like, and I know it sounds like, well, no, of course your head's up. No, but actually working with your eyes, ears open, seeing, like understanding, scanning the ice so you can see the flow of the game, and putting yourself in positions like because if your head is up, the game slows down for you. You see things happening, whereas you look down and look up, you could be coming at me as hard as you can. It's like now the time is going too fast, and you have to react, or you don't see it coming. So anyways, so yes, you can teach kids how to roll off of checks, how to, I always taught the kids that I play with is if you don't have the puck or you make a play, get your stick up right away, so that if someone runs in, you run into the stick, right? So those are little things that I taught. Teach them how to roll, how to absorb hits, keeping tight to the boards if you are on the boards. Those are things that you can teach. But in my opinion, or from what I would believe 100% for me, is that teaching the aggressive part of like doing the hitting or taking the hits, I believe that it's you have that or you don't. Right? This is what I've seen. This is what I have seen is that there's some kids that would take, because they go to these hitting or body checking clinics, we'll call them, and although some of it's good, the end of the day, kids that are brave will take hits or put themselves in positions to be in those dirty areas, we'll call it, and the aggressive kids will finish hits. and there's some kids that will just never do it, or shy away from it, or scared from it. So I think a lot of the times, from a safety, and the other thing is man, it's hard for me to say this sometimes in public, but um, some guys are just going to get hammered because they don't have the brain for hockey.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Their heads down.
Man,
the
there's
skill,
some kids that
yeah.
just constantly get hammered.
Yeah,
It's
so
like they're doing something wrong.
100%. Like
Yeah.
really good players don't get hit that often. There are times because you're maybe taking a hit to make a play, but you have to do your job. Or some guys comes out just real dirty. That stuff's going to happen, but I just find some kids that just never put themselves in that situation, and the kids that get hit typically, like they get blown up a lot of the times, they bobble pucks. So it's like that's a skill. It's more of a skill thing, right? So if you're taking a pass and you're playing against bigger guys, then if you have to look down and you're bobbling a puck, that gives a guy time to hit you. So like this, from the skill standpoint, the less you bobble the puck, the less you're going to get hit. The more your head is up, the more you're aware you are, so you can put yourself in better situations. But for me, teaching, you could spend a lot of time on the hitting clinics and it will not change. You'll still see 1, 2, 3 that will go out and hit and will take hits, and you'll see those kids that they don't want any part of it. And no matter how many clinics you do or teaching you do, it doesn't change. I've just seen that over and over.
Yeah, well,
Go ahead. Yeah,
I got a couple of things. One, I do think to a degree, like some kids can learn it, but it's very rare. It's very rare. Where like, and I'm not talking about like the ultra aggressive. Like I was one of those kids that I wasn't a big like finish your hits guy when I was young, but I never grew into like a hyper aggressive, like super into the physicality. It was more just like I did it when I needed to do it because that's part of the job.
Game, finish this.
Yeah,
check.
right.
Part of the
Finish
game,
this
take
check.
the hit.
But I was never like an open ice blow a guy up like that. I never did that once. I don't think. So I think to a degree it can be taught enough where you're useful in the game. But in terms of the actual like techniques of checking, like how to check properly, I never did a hitting clinic, so I don't know how they teach it, but there's so many different ways that you can do it to hit, and like I don't know how necessary it is to, aside from just showing them the basic body positions on how to do it. I don't know how much time necessarily you need to spend on it as the coach. Like you don't need to spend multiple practice times like going over the.
I just like kind of simple. Like in as an athlete, you're always going to be in a good, powerful, balanced position. If you're in an athletic position, a little bit of a hip hinge, your skating stance, right? You're low, like as if you're going to do a squat, or you're playing baseball. You're in that ready position, sort of thing. If you're in that position, most of the times you're going to be more balanced, more stable, more strong, right? It's when you were at a game in the OHL one game where one guy made a pass, and then NHL draft pick made a pass and he stood straight up, and one of the kids just blew him up, and then people are going, "Whoa, this is." No, you got to keep your head up, man. That's like, this is an NHL draft pick that just ignored the fact that this is a contact game, and he got hit hard. He was fine, but he got hit hard, right? Yeah, so like that's what I'm saying. So you could take a lot of the hitting things and you just apply, or the contact thing, and apply it into your sports, right? Like you're doing a drill in the corner. It's like little things like that. It's like you don't have to hit to necessarily be physical, right? Some guys, that's an advantage. So if you learn how to take angles and to cut the guy's hands off, not with a machete, but like if you're angling off, you're doing angling drills where you're forcing guys to the outside or where you want them to go. And if you can get in front of their hands, that's a form of checking. So it doesn't have to be thundering body checks. It can be just the physicality or angling and taking away time and space from someone and separating from the puck.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to point out, because for some of those more tentative kids, I think the thought of body checking when you go into your first year is the booming body check. Like kids they're just not aware that it doesn't have to be that, because they think body checking means like, oh, now I'm going to get crushed every time I touch the puck. But if you can explain it from a coaching perspective, if you can explain it to them after those like little technique things or their hitting clinic or whatever, just like, guys, I know there's hitting, but that doesn't mean that we have to be running around trying to blow guys up. And that can go for the kid that's tentative or the kid that's too overzealous about throwing the big hit.
Yeah.
You know, because you get those kids, like you said, where they're like, I just want to smash guys. But
Yeah.
now they're running around everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're actually just like not being effective. So
Well,
it can go either way,
a
right?
smart player will welcome that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a smart player, a kid that can figure it out. But that's not a lot of times a teachable thing, like a lot of the times. So like if I'm playing and I see a guy coming running at me hard, I had no problem with that. I'll just tighten up to the boards, hold on to the puck a little bit. He's coming at me and trying to kill me. I know his sticks off the ice, and I'll wait, and I've already got my play made, and I'll wait till that last little bit where might even take the hit, and then I'll slide it through his feet. So he tried to hit me. I'll hit him while he's hitting me, or I'll absorb it. The play's made. He thought he did a great job, but now it's a 2-on-1, or I've set this guy up for a goal, and it's like, okay, keep doing that. I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But
exactly.
but I think maybe we got away from the thing. It's like you can teach it, fine. I would say teaching the kids or showing them the ways to absorb hits on the boards is what I think a lot of people are looking at. Is there's technique for that, it's like teaching how to roll, right? How to roll up, you know, make a play or whatever, roll off the board so that you're spinning off a check, or getting your stick up, not up in the face, but if you have to, you have to. But keeping your stick maybe across their
in a defensive
across
position,
their triceps or whatever, shoulders, just a quick jab, so that when they think twice about hitting you again, things like that. I think it's good to teach them the safety, but I think a lot of that just comes from having like your head up and a skill level where you can make plays and you see it coming, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the most important thing about it is, like, don't forget, after the technique stuff, is teaching them what the hitting is for. It's like you're trying to separate guys from pucks. You're trying to make space. You're trying to, like, why do we do hitting? Why is it in the game? That's an important thing too. So
just 1 second though.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I got the question. I didn't miss anything.
Last one here. I have this is a what's the word? This is a spicy question. Okay. I have a young player that loves playing the game. He plays with his normal AAA team during the season, then spring and summer tournaments twice a month for no other reason than he loves playing. Recently, we run into a coach who's funneling the players to more private sessions. I love hockey and all, but it's getting to be a bit much. How do you deal with this type of situation when you don't want to go to the extras? Have you noticed this affecting players and their future when a coach forces them to, or feels like they're forcing them to do the extra stuff?
Yeah, this is the one that I always
Spicy
deal
one.
with. Wow,
Yeah.
it is and it isn't.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's spicy. It's okay. I said it just recently. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. That's the bottom line.
Well, let's start with the last part.
Okay.
Have you noticed this affect players and their future? There's the because that's kind of what you're saying.
How future? That's my question.
Like, ultimately,
no,
is it going to affect the career of a kid if you say no? Even if the coach says, okay, like F you, then you're not playing or whatever. Even if someone's that much of an asshole. But ultimately, have you seen it affect the kid's future as a hockey player?
No.
Okay, there's one. Now you can answer.
What's the question?
So
just put it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's getting to be a bit much. Like, how do you resist or get away from doing the extras when you're feeling the pressure? Like, this coach is funneling you to do the extra skate now, in addition to the spring shit or whatever.
Yeah. So again, it comes down. We've said this several times. It's like you, as a coach, if you're my coach, you're my coach. That's fine. What is my schedule? My schedule is 3 practices a week and my games. Okay, great. You need me to do fitness before practice and all that stuff. That's fine. Within that, I'll do anything I'm supposed to do. Right? That's fine. It's all good. You start making me or suggesting that I need to go to your private camps or your private clinics or your extras. Now you're bugging me, and I don't have to do that, and nor will I. I will not do it. I've done that with my kids, and I wouldn't change that. And if someone says that they'll have an effect on your hockey, you won't play this, that, the other thing, that's fine. Then just don't play them. That's fine. I don't really care. That's my argument with people that coach hockey and have businesses on the side. It's just, I'm not here to make you wealthy. You want to coach. If you want to run clinics, do that separately. But I don't like the threat of it. I don't like anything about that. I think it's actually disgusting. Because a lot of people are using it's a very subtle bullying tactic to take people's money, and not for me. But at the end of the day, it will not make a difference. Like, if my son was to get cut, or not get to play on that team, I'd be actually happy about it. I will play somewhere else. If my son was, so now we got different levels, right? If my son's just not good enough, then it really, you're not going to ruin his career. He's ruining it himself because he's not very good. If my son's good, you're not going to ruin it because he's good. So these people really don't have an effect, even though they might tell you that and might try to bully you, or I hate using that word, but or might try pushing buttons to make it say like we can ruin. Well, then you know what? Get away from me if you're even talking like this. It's just stupidity to me. So I can honestly say, someone was asking my kid the other day what one of the rink guys was saying, because he has a son. He said, like, what did you do? Like, I'm watching all these kids do this extra stuff. And what did you do? And Charlie said, nothing. I did with my training here when I could. I was on vacation or whatever when I was a kid, and nothing. He goes, you learn hockey when you're older. He goes, it's not going to make a difference. But we're not here to make people wealthy. It's an expensive sport already, man. And I just, it makes me want to puke in my mouth when a coach is having side skates and people are there because they feel like, oh man, I don't want him to be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. You be mad at him. He's telling to beat it, man. Like,
and kids do feel like that, man. Like we've had like even recently, like we've had kids where they're like, yeah, like I'm catching heat because I'm not going to this extra stuff that my coach is running. And it's like, dude, why are you making kids feel like that? And it's like out of nowhere, like you have a overnight tent business of hockey clinics when it's like you're not a skills coach, man. And it's hard to see that at the time, because I remember very, very clearly, like my parents were not in the hockey world at all, and most parents aren't in the hockey world at all. So you hear the names that are like in AAA organizations or in your sport organization that are always around, so they seem like an important name. Like I could list 5 right off the hop here of guys that I remember that were like an important person in bunny years, that they really would have an influence or really be good for the kids or really this or really that. Only like 3 years out of AAA to realize like I didn't know anything. Like I was an idiot, you know? And it's really hard to see at the time because you just hear what people are saying. And if you're not experienced in the sport, you can't tell. It's hard to vet whether or not someone's actually good at what they're doing. You know, I clearly remember this person. Oh, if they coach, like we got to try to get this guy as a coach. We got to try to get this guy as a coach. It's like, that guy's not a good coach. He's not a good coach at all. Why? Like, so what is the buzz about? So I sympathize with parents that are in this situation, because you feel like your hockey world is still only your small AAA loop or AAA organization and the teams that surround it. Like you can't see outside of that yet, but I can assure you from experience being through it, you're saying the same thing I'm saying. It's like these people that they're not real hockey people. They don't actually influence your life in any way. If the kid's good, he's going to be good, and it doesn't matter what one guy says, because even if that guy's an OHL coach, there's still 19 other teams that have a coach that could like your kid. So it's like, even if somebody has a personal vendetta against you, there's still way more options out there. You don't need the one person. You know what I mean?
no, you don't.
So
No, you just got to be a good hockey player.
yeah, that's the bottom line.
It's the bottom line.
Yeah.
It's no one's gonna make it or break it for you. You make it yourself. And but that's that part of this hockey thing is just it makes me sick. There's some coaches that do it out of thinking that they're doing something good for their kids, right? Like, and that's, I don't want to say everybody's just trying to take money. There's some coaches that they probably don't make a nickel on it, or maybe there's a few bucks that they do some summer skates thinking that, I'm going to keep the kids skating and doing practice once a week, and then they're like, well, how come no one's here, or we're missing guys? It's like, because it's July 27th. They're at the cottage. They're playing baseball. They're playing soccer. They got a lacrosse tournament. It's like, let hockey be hockey. But I mean, some people have good intentions, and it's fine.
So on that note, though, I want to touch on that too, because I'm thinking of myself as if I was to coach a AAA team, I think I would be of that mindset. Like, hey, I actually think I'm a good coach for you guys, and so if you guys want to, or I'm gonna run a camp like through the summer, but I would make it like very explicitly clear, like highlight red, talk to the people on the phone about it, and be like, if you can't come, if you can't afford it, if you don't want to, you don't have to come. Like, you don't need to come. I don't need you to come. I'm offering it to people that want to do it, because if I'm that person that also runs a hockey school, it's like I would make it so clear that there's no pressure for you to do this at all, and you don't need to come, that it would hopefully mitigate as much of that dynamic as possible. But I know that most people don't really do that. But if I was in that position, that's what I would try to do. Is like you don't want to make people feel like they have to spend money, or because I remember being in it, man, with my parents. I remember it very clear.
I did that, right?
Yeah.
It's like when I was coaching, when they asked me to coach in Detroit those couple of years, that was the caveat. I said, okay, first of all, whoever's funding, like I had to get paid for it, right? That was like I wasn't going to quit my business to go coach free. So, and I was really not, um, I was more than reluctant to do it because, but it was a good thing for me and the kids. So it worked out fine. But that was the first thing I said, whoever's paying the bills, well, I know who it was, but we talked and I said, like, make this really clear. You're paying the bills here. This does not give you a license to complain about your kid, talk about your kid. It doesn't give you one extra shift, one extra anything, because that would be wrong. He goes 100% no, and he was 100% good about it. He just wanted to have us coaching. He could afford it, no problem, and paid me for it. And he was like right out of the way, really good guy. Never had to do one thing for his kid. When I took the team, that was the first thing I said to the team. I said, "You guys all know what I do for a living." I said, I'm your coach right now. So the guys that have skated with me, because that's where I got to know them, is they came out and did skills with me. And that's what I said to them. I said, the first thing that you need to know is that, like, yeah, you know what I do for a living, but that does not mean in any way, shape, or form that when you see that I have a camp, that you have to be there. And if you think that at all, you're absolutely wrong. I said, if there's ones that are appropriate for you and you feel like you really want to go or you want to go, that's fine, but it won't change ice time. It won't change how I think of you. And if you don't go, it won't change ice time. It won't change how I think of you. It has nothing to do with this team. So if there's no offense taken, and it's not a suggestion that I coach that you come to my camps. And then there was a few people that did because they were already customers. Couple went to one here and there, and some went to none. And it did, and I was honest to right to a T on this thing because it's the right thing to do. I don't want to sound like I'm the perfect person that walked on water, but I strongly believe in that because I really could have had clinics anytime I wanted. I could have been making off of these people, and they could have hated me or liked me or whatever. Maybe they would have been indifferent about it or whatever, but I could have just abused that for as long as I wanted. But that to me, it was just not the right thing to do.
Yeah. I think that's a good one to stop. We did all 10, so I don't want to do any more. So that's wraps up this series. So we'll be on to something new next week. Like I said at the start, if you guys want to be involved with the Q&A stuff or start with a membership where you guys can talk with us and do those consults, this is a great time to do it because hockey season's starting in a few weeks, and it's really nice to have a resource. I think about like for my parents, and it's cheap on purpose. That's the other thing, right? It's $10 a month, man. So it's like it's a resource that you can use whenever you want for $10 a month. It's awesome. So we designed it that way on purpose so that it's accessible, so that you can use it. So if you want to do that, do it because this is the time where things start to happen, and it's good to have somebody that you can talk with. So thanks to all you guys that wrote in questions. I know I didn't get to all of them. But at least we have a bank of them so we can pull them out again later if we come back to some of these topics, etc. So that's all. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
I do, but
Do you? What do you got?
I just okay. I was gonna say at the beginning, and then we got to this. Last thing I was gonna say, I'm revisiting Mark Messier's book. It's really good. I think any hockey player, the young guys might not know who Mark Messier is, but I had my doubts. Not my doubts. I didn't know. A lot of times people get labeled things because they just get labeled, but he was considered one of the best leaders in hockey. And reading his book, it's like he really does show how humble he is and how much of a leader he is. There's so many gems in there. So if you're looking for a hockey book, I think it would be really good for parents and kids to see it because it's not like it talks about leadership all the time. But just when he speaks and he goes through scenarios, there's some really good principles and you can see how humble he is. So I would really highly suggest that. So it's Mark Messier, No One Wins Alone. Yeah, really, really good book. And then Charlie bought a book a couple weeks ago, so I just delved into it. It's called How Champions Think. It's another one I would. This is going to be, you have to be a little bit older, like 16 and up. Really, really good. And it's what I like about these things, like for me too, because I've read so many of these, but going into it just for the sports side of things, it's really good because it's all the things we touch on that we just take for granted. Little things like visualization, but the guy explains these things in explains them in good terms, or you could like paints a nice picture for you, and all that stuff. So I'm really enjoying that book. So that one's called How by Bob Rotella. It's called How Champions Think. Really,
Champions
really
Think.
interesting book.
So How Champions Think, Mark Messier book, and the Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's 3 to finish off the episode.
And the reason I like to suggest books like this is because we always talk about when people talk about training, it's always the physical side, right? And people, we say this all the time, what percent of the game or life is mental, and people have different numbers, but it's a huge part. People don't tap into it enough, and Mark Messier talks about this in his book about how the mental side like would open his eyes one day, and energy and all this stuff. So really good. I think people need to spend a little bit of time doing some reading, and I'm not talking about reading a book a minute. Talking about taking 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, reading a book. It's going to do wonders for you, like absolute wonders, if you can just get in the head of people that are successful, or learning things about visualization, or learning things about being present, and seeing examples of professionals that use these techniques, because it's a game changer for a lot of people. It could just simply be your confidence, like whatever it is. I think these books are great. So I always suggest taking time to read, even though it might not be the coolest thing to do. It's cool to me.
Yeah, awesome. Good thing to finish on there. So on to something new next week. See you guys.